Unitarian thought. His name is William Ellery Channing. William was born in 1780 to a wealthy family in Newport, Rhode Island. Newport at the time was a bastion of religious freedom. The city had Baptist, Congregationalist, Quakers, Independent, and Jewish synagogues. William and his family attended Newport's second Congregational church. It was from this pulpit that William heard his ministers' stern and appalling theology. It was also the first pulpit where slavery was brought to his attention. In 1792, William went to live with his uncle, a liberal minister, in New London, Connecticut. 3 years later, he continued his education at Harvard College. He was only 15 years old. Studying there, his eyes were open to the world of philosophy he had never experienced before. He graduated at the top of his class in 1798. He left Harvard and took a job as a private tutor in Virginia. While in Virginia, he saw firsthand slavery and the society that was built around it and was appalled. It was from this experience that he decided to give his life up to God and their work. William returned to Newport in 1800. He began to talk with his childhood minister, Dr. Hopkins. While he still deeply disliked Dr. Hopkins' theology, he was inspired by how generous and self-sacrificing he was. In Newport, he saw God and nature through the beach. No spot on earth has helped me to form as so much as the beach. There I lifted up my voice in praise amidst the tempest. There, in reverential sympathy with the mighty power around me, I became conscious of the power within. Determined to find a life in the pulpit, William returned to Harvard to study under Professor David Tappan. It was at Harvard that William developed one of the guiding principles of his life and ministry. He determined that before listening to other people make a decision, that people should think through things for themselves, form their own opinion, and then discuss it with others. By discussing things with others first, he determined, people could become easily swayed and stop listening to themselves. By finding the truth outside of themselves, William believed people would make poor decisions and be subjected to the will of others. This is a thought and practice that he continued throughout his life, and we still see tenets of in our own principles within Unitarian Universalism today. An important thing to know and understand about this time period was that there was no actual Unitarian churches at the time. That name wasn't being applied to churches really yet. Remember, Unitarian churches came from Congregationalist standing order churches of Puritan descent. A hallmark of these churches was the idea of church independence and covenant. Each church organized themselves and found their own minister and made a covenant among its members. Sound familiar? As time marched on, some communities favored a Calvinist theology, one that was very severe and relied on predetermination. Some, though, called liberal Congregationalist churches, believed in science and reason and that God can be seen in all of the mysteries of nature and in all people. In 1805, what was known as the Unitarian controversy really began to heat up in New England. By his nature, William disliked discord, but by 1815 was pushed to start publicly aligning himself and his theology with the liberal churches. He wrote a scathing response to an article published in a journal. After this letter, the Unitarian controversy became even spicier. Many of the Orthodox standing order ministers refused to pulpit exchange with liberal ministers. Now, pulpit exchanges were where ministers visited other churches to preach. This was a practice that was common and done everywhere and also encouraged. The refusal to share pulpits was a line in the sand for many liberal ministers. William, ever the fanatic orator, chose the pulpit for his response. In 1819, he took to the pulpit at the First Independent Church in Baltimore for his friend's ordination. During his sermon entitled Unitarian Christianity, William laid out Unitarian-specific theology for the first time. In it, he stated that the Bible was written by men for men and not by the direct hand of God. Using reason in religion was of utmost importance. Additionally, he said that there was no reasoned understanding of the Trinity from Scripture, that the idea of the Trinity distracts people from their focus on their God. Jesus was to be an example of how to live one's life, and that the role of Jesus was to bring God to people, not people to God. By 1825, the Congregationalists and the Unitarians finally split, in no small part to William Ellery Channing. As one small note, the Calvinist Congregationalist churches are known today as the United Church of Christ churches. Our shared history, polity, and values have led us to be allies today. In fact, our own AL program was created with the United Church of Christ. Now, back to William. He continued to write and preach fervently. He urged people to find God by first examining themselves. He influenced and encouraged the formation of the Transcendentalist Society with Ralph Waldo Emerson. He believed all people worthy of God's love. He spent time with children, including writing an early Unitarian catechism. The most important job, he believed, was that of a teacher. William traveled often, preaching throughout New England, and in 1822, traveled to Europe in hopes of improving his health. While it didn't do a lot for his health, he took this time to write extensively, specifically on politics. When he came home, ever the orator, he continued to speak on the rights of low-waged earners, women, literature, and the anti-slavery movement. By 1825, the American Unitarian Association was formally forming. William, though, afraid of large organizations, refused to take part in organizing the new association. He asserted that, quote, the tendency of great institutions to accumulate power in a few hands was inevitable, and that they promote intellectual dependence, allowing people to rely on an institution rather than themselves for moral guidance. Channing continued to write, preach, and teach throughout his life. He died in 1842. Today, he is remembered as one of the founding thinkers of Unitarian thought in the United States. Thank you for joining us for another UU of the Week. To find out more, visit us at uuoftheweek.org.